Alright, hello everyone and welcome to WWE Discussion. I'm your host and WWE enthusiast Dougie Doug, and today's episode I'm going to be discussing Friday Night Smackdown, July 14, 2023 edition. And this episode of Smackdown, well, overall, it was a good show, and it had and in the main event, you had the battle for supremacy in the SmackDown Women's Division. Bianca Belair taking on Asuka for the Women's Championship. And with that, we're going to get right into the action, starting with Sheamus and Ridge Holland versus Pretty Deadly. So this feud continues to roll on. This was a solid physical tag team match that concluded with Pretty Deadly once again getting one over on the Brutes. So Austin Theory, who was the beneficiary of Pretty Deadly interference a week ago, nowhere to be found, which seems to suggest that Theory and Pretty Deadly worked together against the Brutes, but that is the extension of their relationship. So I think so it will be interesting to see what the end game ultimately is in this feud and when exactly it ends. You know, maybe this was it. Maybe. But even if it does continue, Sheamus is bulletproof at this point in his career, and Ridge Holland hasn't really been too badly damaged by suffering these losses, so if it did continue, it's not the worst thing, but also it doesn't need to. Meanwhile, Pretty Deadly continues to build momentum, and that, on top of a quality match, makes this a successful segment. So yeah, a hit. Speaking of a hit, Jey Uso promo. So Jey Uso did not get the answer to the challenge he laid down against Roman Reigns. He laid down to Roman Reigns last week, but he did get a measure of revenge on Paul Heyman, rocking the special counsel with a super kick in response to Heyman's rant that blamed him for the injuries suffered by his brother a week ago. Now the crowd was red hot for the segment, especially after they stopped with the dumb what chants, and Jey certainly fed off the energy. Heyman, being the master puppeteer, continued his attempt to manipulate the family, but Jey would have none of it. He fought with his other brother Solo and stood in the center of the ring as his own man. A nice little callback to main event Jey Uso. He is going to challenge Roman Reigns at SummerSlam for the undisputed title, undisputed Universal title. But the question is less about what's next for Jey and more about whether or not WWE is going to pull the proverbial trigger and make him the one to dethrone the one. So as you can see by the question on the screen, does Jey Uso win the title? Now I did put out a tweet saying that I'm all for Jey Uso winning the title, but it just doesn't feel like he's going to win. We have been here before. A challenger steps up to Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, has momentum on his side, has a case to win, should win the title, and he loses. Jey Uso seen a very similar thing here. A guy with momentum on his side, a guy with a case to beat Reigns and be the champion. The match is coming up, but it feels like he's going to lose. So, I'm all for it, but again, it feels like he's going to lose. United States Championship Invitational 4-Way. Santos Escobar gets a huge win here. And the match was great. The pace was great. The physicality and drama on point. And Escobar winning, I will admit, that was a nice little surprise. I thought Grayson Waller was winning this match. And it's even nicer too because, you know, the LWO, they're featured, but they rarely win. So the attack by Karrion Kross, which distracted AJ Styles, also advances his rival Styles, and it does make sense given that things are kind of unsettled between them. There was a match last week, and ultimately because the Bloodline segment ran so long, that match had to kind of be rushed right through, so it makes sense that WWE wants to go right back to it. However, WWE creators got to do a better job trying to reignite interest in this program, because at the moment it seems like there is no interest in it. I mean, I'm all for a Kross and Styles match. There was one match these guys had that certainly was a proper showcase of what these guys can do in the ring, but again, can you build it up? Can you reignite interest in it? Because it seems like it's a dead program at the moment. But as for Escobar, he moves on. 2 weeks time, he faces the winner of the next invitational match, which is next week. And if LA Knight wins that match, well, hey, at least Escobar made it this far, but he's probably not going to beat Knight if that's who he's facing in the end. But congrats to Escobar. He gets a huge win. He's more than earned this win. And then the main event of the show, the Women's Championship match, Bianca Belair versus Asuka. And this match, well, it did look like it was a bit rushed, likely due to some time restraints. They didn't need to pack all the different pieces of the finish into the segment, but it was still good stuff that demonstrated the chemistry between the EST and the Empress of Tomorrow. Now, the extracurricular activity involving Flair, Bayley, and Sky adds an air of uncertainty and drama, which also helped make this a pretty good segment. All of this would seem to suggest that it will be Belair versus Asuka versus Flair at SummerSlam for the WWE Women's Championship. And Io Sky, Miss Money in the Bank, is going to be lurking in the background. And I'll tell you what, another reason why this segment was a positive is because it shows that there are things happening in the women's division, which is a major plus for the Boo brand given the last year of one-dimensional creative for that women's division. So in conclusion, this was a good show. The promo from Jey Uso was great, and it built on last week's show dominated angle. The women's division took center stage, and there finally feels like there is action in the mid-card with the United States title. The show could certainly use more LA Knight, but the introduction of an edgier Shotzi and a tease of a renewed Hurt Business should create excitement about the short and long-term future of SmackDown. So I'm a big fan of the Bloodline story, but it's also nice to kind of have a bit of a break from it. It still continued, but it didn't quite drag on like it did. And I talked about this last week too. The Bloodline story, again, it's great, but we need to kind of not lose sight of everything else on the show. And it felt like the show did a good job kind of refocusing and reminding everybody else about, and kind of reminding everybody what else is happening on SmackDown, why else you should tune in. So overall, this show was a hit. Good job, WWE. And yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of WWE Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.